Hi, it's Andy Bauer at Object Arts. In this video I'd like to produce a slightly improved version of the Hello World sample that comes with Dolphin Smalltalk. It's been pointed out that the current Hello World sample, while being very simple, doesn't accurately reflect the way one builds applications in Dolphin. The normal user interface framework in Dolphin is something called Model-View-Presenter. And so with this sample, I'd like to show you how you can build an MVP, Model-View-Presenter application for Hello World. So perhaps you've just installed Dolphin Smalltalk Community Edition. In order to start it, you want to double-click on your Community Edition image. And we can dismiss the splash screen. Now, before we get started with our MVP Hello World, I'd just like to run through another couple of possibilities for what might be considered to be a Hello World application in Smalltalk. If we open a workspace, we can actually type some Smalltalk expressions. One of the first ones that people like to do to show Hello World is to just write to a window called the transcript. So we'll first show the transcript. I'll just reorganize it so it's positioned so you can see it. And then what you can do is you can say transcript show and a string. It's quite often used for debugging. And then with the cursor on the same line as that piece of Smalltalk, you just say evaluate it. And you'll see over here we've printed Hello World to the transcript. Well, personally, I don't consider that to be too much fun, so let's do something slightly more complicated. One thing we can do is we could put, we could have a piece of text called a variable called text, and we could assign the string Hello World to it. And once again, if I evaluate that, and now if I inspect the value of text, you see that that does indeed have Hello World in it. It's a string object. Now, that's all very well, but once again, that's still not very exciting. Moving on to our Hello World application, we're going to need to have a model object which actually holds the data, when in this case is going to be Hello World, the text string Hello World. Now, one of the things you can do, one of the types of models you can have is a thing called a value holder, which is basically a wrapper around any sort of object. So let's create a value holder which contains the text string Hello World. The way to do this is to send the message as value to any object. So if I want to create my text model, and it's going to be a value holder, if I say it equals our current text object, and we send as value to it, if I evaluate that, okay, and now if we go and inspect text model, we will see that it is a value holder which contains the value Hello World. Fantastic. Now the interesting thing about that is we can now ask that what its value is, and ask it to display itself, and indeed it has Hello World in it, and we can change the value. Okay, if we display that, or if we inspect that, we will actually send the value and inspect the answer, and you see that we've now changed our value holder to be holding the value good morning. So what we're going to do is we're going to use one of these value holders as our model, and the reason why we do this will become clear later. So we don't actually need to create a new class for our model. We have an existing class that will do, value holder. And so we've done the first part of our application. We've decided what the model is going to be. Now let's go and create the presenter. Usually the sequence of when you create an MVP application, you usually design the model first, then the presenter, and then the view. and it's usually an iterative process. You may go around the loop several times, but that's typically the order in which you'll work. So let's close this window and let's create a package. This is the first step in any work that you do yourself for our application. We'll create a new package and we'll call it Better Hello World. Okay, and you see we created a new package down here. If we right click on that, we can actually set this as being our default package. And this means if we don't explicitly assign a package to any new classes we create, they'll go into this one, which is a useful little feature. Let's close the package browser and let's bring up the class browser. Right, let's go and find the presenter hierarchy. We type presenter into the search box up here, and here is our presenter hierarchy. Now, we want this presenter that we're going to create to show Hello World to be a top level window, and this type of presenter is a shell. So we're going to descend our presenter from shell. So right click on that, say new, and we'll call this Better Hello World. Okay, and you see where it says packaged here. Well, we don't want to actually put it into a named package. We'll uncheck that, and then it will actually go into our Better Hello World package. You see, if we look down here, this is the package that our new class has gone into. Now, the first thing you need to do whenever you create a new presenter is to specify what its default model is. Now, you do this on the class side. So you click the class radio button here and create a new method called default model. And in this particular case, we're going to answer Hello World. And if you remember, we want it to be as a value holder, so we're going to say as value to that. And that is our default model. Now, we can actually invoke this pretty simply in a minute, just as soon as we've created a view. So let's go and do this. Let's create a view for our Hello World class by right-clicking on the class and saying new, and we're going to call it the default view. And this brings up the view composer with a shell window. So that's all we need to do. We can just save that. Okay, close that. And now we've done that, we'll have an extra method on the class side of our Better Hello World class called default view, resource default view, and this contains a specification of that view that we've just saved down. So now if we go to the class and right click on it, go down to views and choose show default view, you see we get a window coming up. In this particular case it's a very large window which we can fix later, but you see it's got nothing in it because basically, even though this actually has the model attached, we haven't told it how to display the model on the screen. Let's go and just take a look with the Visual Inspector. We click on the Visual Inspector tool and then click on this. You'll see that we have our Better Hello World object, and its model is indeed a value holder containing Hello World. But we don't have any other presenters, and the view is just a plain shell view. So let's close this and go and add some more detail to this. Now what we want to do is we want to create another sub-presenter inside our shell, which is going to be able to display text. And the way we do this is by using a text presenter. So inside on the instance side of our Better Hello World class, we're going to create a new method called create components. Every composite presenter, one that's composed of other presenters, will always have a create components method. You should supersend this Now we're going to want to assign this new presenter, the text presenter, which we're going to display the hello world in, to an instance variable so we can access it later. So let's add this instance variable to our class definition. So we select the class definition and choose a name for it. Let's call it text to display presenter. Okay, and I'll accept that. Let's go back to our method source and let's say text to display presenter becomes equal to self add. We're going to add a new presenter with a name. It's going to be a text presenter. Send new to that, and we'll call it, give it a text name, text to display. Now this textual name here is just the way the method used to link the presenter to its associated view. So when we come to draw the view, we will draw a, we will add it with a name of text to display. Let's compile that. And now let's go and modify our view. So show, or edit, sorry, default view. Okay, now if you remember last time, the view came up at a rather unpleasant large size, and that's because Windows has chosen the size for us. The way to get around that is by selecting the shell view and editing its properties. And go down the bottom here and you'll see something, a property that says use preferred extent. Now that says let Windows choose the size. We don't want to do this, we want to choose the size ourselves, so let's turn that off. Okay, and now let's go and add a text field to this view. So hover over the toolbox, click the text fields category, and we're going to want to use a static text view, mainly because we're not going to edit it. So we'll drag that across here, and once there we can resize it and modify it as necessary. Let's change the size and go and edit the properties. We can make the alignment centered. We can change the font. Nice 24-point font, and perhaps you might want to change the text color as well. Modify the fore color. Okay, and then one other thing we need to do is we need to specify the name of this view such that it will go attached to the same name presenter. If you remember, we called the presenter text to display, so we must edit the name property here and call it text to display. Notice you don't have to put quotes around this, it's just a text string. Okay, we don't need to modify this static text contents here, it'll be replaced as soon as the window is opened, so we can just save that and close the view composer. Now let's go and try instantiating one of our Better Hello World presenters. Choose views, say show default view, and you see it's come up, but we don't see anything here. Now why is that? Let's take a look with the visual inspector again, and you see we have our Better Hello World presenter. It has its model here, but we also have some sub-presenters, and we have our text presenter which we've created, but you'll notice that its model is a blank value holder, and that's because we haven't told the Better Hello World shell to pass on its model to the its internal components. So let's do that. I'll close these two things here. The way we do that is we'll override the model colon method. So if I create an override for model colon, I want to supersend that again. Okay, and now we also want to assign that model to our text presenter. So we have a text to display presenter, and we'll set its model to be this as well. Let's do that. Compile that. Okay, and now let's go and instantiate our class. And you see that has indeed worked correctly. So, what have we actually created here? Well, we have created a composite Model-View-Presenter component that represents our Hello World application. At the outer level, the component is represented by a shell presenter, which is connected to a shell view, which appears as the window on the screen. And both of these have as their model a value holder containing the Hello World string. But in order to get the Hello World text to display inside that window, we had to create a subcomponent which consisted of a text presenter connected to a static text view. And again, both of these have as their model the same value holder containing the string Hello World. It's probably easier to see this if we separate the two components out, the outer level one and the subcomponent. So, what are the different ways of invoking this? Well, we can invoke it from a workspace. We can say better hello world show. Evaluate that. That brings up our application. The other thing we can say is better hello world show on and give it a different model. Okay, if I evaluate that, you see it comes up in a with a different piece of text. And if indeed, if we assign this to a variable, call it app, and evaluate that, okay, we can actually also change the model if we want, just by sending model to it. Okay, so those are a number of different ways of launching our application and talking to it. One other thing we might want to do is we might want to install an icon for it into the samples folder. You see Dolphin has a samples folder here. So the way to do that is to go onto the class side, and in an initialize method we're going to install it into that folder. Now, one thing to note is that on the class side, initialize methods are not supersent. On the instance side they are, but on the class side they're not, otherwise it can cause no end of problems. What we're going to do is we're going to say Smalltalk development system, add sample folder icon for this class self, and we're going to give it a title of Better Hello World. Okay, now this initialize method is normally sent when a class is loaded into the image. Currently our class is loaded now, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call this method directly, and one way to do that is to just write a little comment. Okay, so when we compile this method, okay, we can now go over here and we can choose evaluate it, and we should be able to go into our samples folder, and you see we now have a Better Hello World icon, which if we double click it will launch our application. Now, as with most of these things, if we're providing an initialize method, it's useful to be symmetrical and be able to provide something to uninstall the icon from the samples folder. And the way we do that is by providing an uninitialize method And all this needs to do is Smalltalk development system and remove system folder icon named. Now notice that this is actually removing from the system folder the entire hierarchy of the system folder rather than just the samples folder. So it removes a matching icon, and we called ours Better Hello World. And if we compile that, this will be called when the package is removed from the system, so it removes the icon as well. Let's go and just go visit the package browser, and you can see that our Better Hello World package has a star by it, which means it's been changed since it was last saved, because we've never saved it. So let's save our package now. Let's externalize it onto disk, and we can now choose to remove it from the image by right-clicking and saying uninstall package. And the answer to that is yes. And now the package is gone, and we see that the icon has also been removed from the system folder. So I hope this tutorial has been a useful introduction to how to create a Hello World application in the style of the standard Model-View-Presenter framework in Dolphin.